comment during our meetings. We will be accepting testimony from parties. If you wish to testify on any particular petition before us this evening, please use the raise hand feature. You can raise your hand at any time and we will recognize you at the appropriate time for the presentation of evidence for each case. Director of Planning, Joe Vunich, will be moderating the Zoom meeting and will be asked to provide names of those individuals that wish to speak again as hands are raised. I would like to call the meeting of the City of Wildwood's Board of Adjustment to order. The board members present today are Arnie Sprunger, board member, Bob Morris, board member. Well, is Mr. Morris on? I'm sorry, Mr. Morris is not with us tonight. Kevin Lux, board member, and Michael Lee, alternate member, and myself, Jared Frank, vice chair and acting chair for tonight's meeting. The Department of Planning staff present is Joe Vunich, Director of Planning, and Melanie Ripito, Assistant Director of Planning. City Administrator Steve Cross, City Attorney John Young, Assistant City Attorney Sam Beffa, and Court Reporter Courtney Tallman are also present. First, I offer into the record the affidavit of publication pertaining to today's meeting, April 21st, 2022, and take official notice of the zoning ordinance of Wildwood, including Chapter 400, Article 2, authorizing and establishing the Board of Adjustment's powers and duties. Now, let me explain the hearing procedure. Please be aware the information I'm about to describe is also provided on the Board of Adjustment public hearing procedure handout, which was available online prior and up to tonight's meeting. This hearing is informal in nature. However, the meeting's proceedings will be recorded by a reporter for future transcription if needed. The petitions are called in the order listed on the agenda. As the petition is called, I will ask a Department of Planning staff member to read each request into the record. Thereafter, the Department of Planning will have opening remarks and a brief slide presentation. Then the petitioner or his or her representative will be asked to state their name, address, be sworn in by the court reporter, make a brief presentation to the board, explain the nature of the requested variance, and present such evidence and witness testimony that may evidence the practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship that warrant the variance. The board will only consider the unique character of the property to determine whether they warrant the granting of a variance. Board members may ask questions to clarify the facts of the petitioner's presentation. When the board is satisfied with the material presented by the petitioner, the chair will then ask if there is anyone present online who would like to speak in favor or opposition to the requested variance. Each speaker will be asked to provide their name and address, be sworn in, and then provide their evidence and oral testimony. Procedurally, the petitioner may request a continuance at any time during the hearing, prior to a call for the vote, in order to bring in additional evidence or testimony. The board may also continue the proceedings. After the submission of testimony and evidence from all interested parties, the board will ask a staff person to provide the Department of Planning's report on this matter, if requested by any member of the board, the petitioner, or any individual that is participating online. Once all witnesses have been heard, the chair will call for a motion to grant or deny with or without conditions. Then the board will vote. At that time, the presentation of evidence relating to the petition is concluded and no further evidence will be permitted. The board may make a decision today. 4 members of the board must vote in favor of the variance for it to be approved. If a variance is approved, the petitioner has 6 months to obtain the necessary permits or establish the use, or it will expire. If the board's decision is unfavorable, the petitioner has the right of appeal to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. This appeal must be done within 30 days of the decision. Now, also note tonight we do have 4 board members, meaning that all 4 will need to vote in favor for a petition to be either approved or denied. And I believe that was explained in prior phone calls by the city planner.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I may, I'd like to enter a small correction to your introductory remarks. I do not believe that the city attorney, John Young, is in attendance this evening.
Correct. Thank you for noting that, Mr. Cross. That is correct. We have the Assistant City Attorney, Sam Bethel, with us. Mr. Vunich, are there any questions at this time?
Mr. Chair, with your permission, if there's anyone that is an attendee tonight that has any questions about the information that the chair just provided, if you would please use the raise hand feature and I'll promote you so you can ask your question. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I see no raised hands, so I'll make the assumption that there are no questions about the introduction you just provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vunich. Hearing no questions at this time, we'll proceed with the meeting. Mr. Vunich, can you please read the first request into the record, which will be followed by initial comments by the Department of Planning and a brief slide presentation.
Mr. Chair, thank you. The first item tonight is BA 08-22, Dave Fick Supply, 501 North Etherton Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63005, care of Paige Skinner, Landmark Sign Company, 175 Chesterfield Industrial Boulevard, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63005. Requests an exception to the site development plan design criteria and business signs monument for the purpose of replacing an existing monument sign with new representation upon the property located at 501 North Etherton Road, St. Louis County, locator number 18X640046-495 and 501 North Etherton Road, lots A and B, boundary adjustment, lot part B, thereby authorizing a front yard setbacks distance of 15 feet in lieu of the required 50 feet. Per the requirements of Chapter 415.400 Sign Regulations General, this request was reviewed by the Architectural Review Board on February 10th, 2022, and comments were provided upon this matter by its members. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.210 M3 Planned Industrial District Regulations and Chapter 415.420 Sign Regulations for all C&M districts of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, as well as ordinance number 2574, amending Planned Industrial District Ordinance number 2203, the site-specific ordinance approved by the City of Wildwood. This particular site is located in Ward 1. Mr. Chair, I do not know if this is one of the items that has requested postponement.
It is.
So, Mr. Chair, I would respectfully request a motion and second and a voice vote to postpone.
Can I hear a motion to postpone this particular variance request?
I'll make a motion to postpone.
And
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, how do you vote?
Yes, postpone.
Mr. Sprunger?
Yes.
Mr. Lux?
Yes, postpone.
And I as well vote to postpone. So this particular variance will be postponed to the next meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. All right. Sorry. Mr. Vunich, are we proceed to the second variance of the evening?
Thank you, sir. BA 11-22, Ronald Onstadt, 18640 Windy Hollow Lane, Wildwood, Missouri, 63069. Request an exception to the natural resource protection standards for the purpose of constructing a detached garage, which is proposed at a total of 900 square feet upon the property located at 18640 Windy Hollow Lane, locator number 26Y340041, lot 13 of the Estates at the Deer Hollow subdivision, requiring a relocation of a portion of the natural resource protection line and its associated 25-foot foundation setback. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 420.200 Natural Resource Protection Standards and Procedures of the Subdivision and Development Regulations of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code as applied to properties located in the NU Non-Urban Resident District and Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance. This particular request does not offer an exchange of protected, non-protected area, given the extent of area affected by the requested modification. This particular property is located in Ward 6, and I believe this one is moving forward, correct? And with that, Mr. Chair, the department would like to enter into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2, Board of Adjustment of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code. Chapter 415 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance, a file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning relative to this particular request and all contents contained therein, including the department's recommendation report. And then finally, any testimony, exhibits, plats, maps, or other items offered as testimony at tonight's hearing. Mr. Chair, with your permission, Ms. Ripito has a slide presentation she can provide at this time. Thank you.
Please.
Okay, just a moment. Let me pull it up. Okay, can everyone see my screen okay?
Mhm.
Excellent. As Mr. Vunich entered into record, this is 18640 Windy Hollow Lane. The first map here is an overview of the area. As you can see, it's a large lot surrounded by other large lots. This one is more site specific. You can see the irregular shape of the lot and that it's mostly wooded. The next one shows the contours of the property. And as you can see, it's relatively flat at the location of the house, but drops off behind the house into the more wooded area. This screen here shows a site plan of where the applicant is proposing the garage. You can see that's located right down there, and that shows the entire overall lot. This is, the department did a site visit out onto the property, and this is a view from the street of the existing home. Over by the basketball net that you see in the photo there is where the garage that they're proposing would be located. This is a photo taken from standing on the driveway, looking back into the yard. As you can see, there's a bit of a drop there that goes back before the woods, and then it drops even further. This is the actual location of where the proposed garage would be located. This is the other side of the lot, on the other side of the home, where, as you can see, it is also flat, relatively flat where the home is located, but not back behind the home. And with that, that concludes our presentation on this case.
All right. Thank you, Melanie. At this time, I'd like to call the petitioner forward to state his or her name, address, relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter. There you are, Mr. Onstadt.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
My name is Ron Onstadt. I live at 18640 Windy Hollow Lane. We wanted to put a detached garage on the right side of the house. There's a septic tank and
Just a moment, Mr. Onstadt. I'm sorry to cut you off. Can you state your relation to the property, and then we'll swear you in with the court reporter, and then look forward to proceeding.
Relationship to the property. I live here.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Onstadt. At this time, can you explain the nature of the request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance relating to the character of the property?
The 4 acres, 4+ acres is in a steep slope. On the right-hand side of the house, there's a septic tank there and our 1,000-gallon propane. So the right side of the house, facing toward the house, we can't build there. Towards the back of the house, it slopes quite a bit, and we have the well sitting there as well. So the only position that we can put was to the left of the house, facing the other garage, which is pretty level, and it's within the 30-foot easement that we have on the property.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Onstadt, before I open it up for questions?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to any board members' questions.
Mr. Onslaught, did you consider any other locations that wouldn't require you to get into the natural resource protection area?
Yes, sir. I tried relocating it down to the bottom of the the slope, but then the HOA wanted the house or wanted the garage that matches the house and be viewable close from face to face to each garage. So
Mr. Onside, I don't believe that we've, at least I didn't see it right off the bat, where the natural resource protection line or area is. Generally, we look to see if there's a swap is applicable, if we're able to swap one area to the next. I assume in this case, there's not enough area, or do we know any more information on that?
sorry, no, I don't know, but I would be happy to.
Do we, Mr. Vunich, or do you know how that area is composed or?
Well, Mr. Chair, I can offer some commentary with your permission.
Absolutely.
Well, Mr. Chair and members of the board, this particular subdivision constitutes about 27 lots. Well, 27 lots. Almost all the lots are 5 acres or greater in size. And surprisingly, even with 5 acres, the buildable envelope on almost all of them is no greater than 10,000 square feet.
Mhm.
And that building envelope has to encompass not only the dwelling and the attached garage, but all of the improvements associated with such, along with, as Mr. Onstad has described, a septic system, drain field, groundwater well, and then in this case, a propane tank. The department would just note that in this particular instance, the encroachment does not go into the side yard setback. That 30-foot distance is maintained. And the additional disturbance on this basically 4.8 acre lot is 2,700 square feet.
Gotcha. Good. Any other questions from the board, Mr. Lee?
Yeah, Mr. Vunich, I've got a question for staff. I'm looking at the survey, I guess it's page 12 of the packet. And this confirms what you said about the garage not going into the setback. But what I'm wondering on the natural resource protection line is that looks like an arbitrary line. Was that set up for some wood line when this was originally entitled, or is there actually woods where the garage will be placed? Because from the photos, it looked like it was just grass area.
As you know, Mr. Lee, from your time on the Planning and Zoning Commission, the natural resource protection line is actually the edge of disturbance. Beyond that line, so to speak, there cannot be any disturbance. It's 100% protected. But between that 25-foot disturbance setback and that final resource protection line, that area can be cleared. That's why, despite the garage being about 900 square feet, the level of disturbance in the resource protection area is somewhat limited.
That's why I was asking the question, because it's about a third of the garage area is from just visual observation here.
So again, a lot of that area that's being disturbed is already allowable disturbed areas, so to speak.
That answers my question.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from the board?
It does need, I think Mr. Frank was talking about, normally we do a swap. Are you thinking a swap's not necessary here because there really is just a lot of protected area already?
Mr. Spunger, that was the department's position, that when you have, for the most part, 4+ acres, you're limited to 10,000 square feet to start with, and that your request is just an additional 2,700 square feet. The department felt that the swap in this particular instance wasn't necessary. And for the most part, if we did a swap, it would be in an area where there are already improvements, such as the drain field, the septic system, the propane tank, et cetera. It's really, in this particular instance, these lots the site is difficult to develop, and these lots had a very limited amount of disturbed area, or excuse me, undisturbed area to use.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Any other initial questions from the board? Hearing none, I'd like to take the time to open up the floor to any speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor or opposition to the request. We'll wait a moment.
And Mr. Chair, again, if anyone would like to speak in favor or opposition to the request before the board, if you would please use the raise hand feature. And then once I see the raise hand feature, I'll be glad to promote you to a panelist so you can state your name, address, and be sworn in, and then provide your comments. Thank you. Mr. Chair, no one's used the raise hand feature, so thank you.
All right. Hearing no questions from the audience, at this time, would anybody like the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report? Hearing none, Director Bunich, would you like to make any final comments?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, as you know, I've kind of given the summary of the findings of fact in response to Mr. Sprunger's question. The department would only say it is endorsing the variance and would recommend the board support such. As a condition of that support from the department, we do need to have a deed and exhibit submitted showing the revised resource protection line. Thank you. And if there are any questions, Ms. Ripito, Mr. Cross, Mr. Beffa, or I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Okay. Thank you, Director Bunich. Would the board like the opportunity to make any final comments before we close the proceeding? Seeing none, at this time, we will close the proceeding for a vote. I'd like to call for a vote, motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions. Go ahead, Mr. Lee.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Leeds made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Well, I would like to make a second. However, I do think it makes sense to put the requirement of the petitioner recording a revised deed. So
Correct.
quite-
So that you're not going to second that. Is that correct, Mr. Sprunger?
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Or Mr. Lee, if you wanted to revise it, Director Munis, can he revise his?
Well,
His initial-
the motion to approve is based on the city's criteria, so I would assume that would already be the case. Mr. Bunich, you can explain that. They're going to have to follow the criteria if we approve or deny the request.
Yes, Mr. Lay, I took the assumption that your motion to approve was based upon the department's recommendation and associated condition.
Okay. Is there a second to Mr. Lee's request?
With that assumption, I second.
Thank you, Mr. Sprunger. Mr. Lee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Lux?
Yes.
Mr. Sprunger?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Congratulations, your variance has been approved.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, guys. It's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Onstadt. I'm sorry, just something, Director Bunich.
Mr. Chair, the next item is BA 12-22, St. Louis County Catholic Church Real Estate Corporation, 20 Archbishop Bay Drive, St. Louis, Missouri, 63119, care of Matt Schlietler. Network Real Estate, LLC, 5055 State Route N, St. Charles, Missouri, 63304. Request an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of erecting a 195-foot tall monopole for telecommunication purposes, along with an associated equipment area, such being encumbered by a lease established for the same, all being located upon a property at 2001 Shepherd Road, St. Louis County, locator number 22V140282, Babler State Share subdivision. This request would authorize a front yard setback of 97 feet in lieu of the 215 foot required standard. The petitioner is also requesting a side yard setback distance of 61 feet in lieu of the 195 foot standard. These requests are contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Resident District of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance, Chapter 430 Regulation of Placement of Wireless Facilities and Wireless Support Structures of the Wildwood Municipal Code, and Conditional Use Permit CUP PZ 9-21. This particular property is located in Ward 1. And Mr. Chair, we do have an email from the petitioner's representative requesting a postponement. So the department would respectfully request a motion second and vote to postpone.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. That being said, we will go ahead and call for a vote to postpone. Can I have a vote or a motion to postpone?
I'll make a motion to postpone till the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Sprunger. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Lux, how do you vote?
Yes, postpone.
I'm sorry, we have a motion to postpone. How do you vote, Mr. Lux?
Sorry, yes, I'll approve the postponement.
Mr. Sprunger,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
and I as well vote to postpone. So we will postpone until the next meeting.
Thank you.
We'll move right along there, Mr. Vunich.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, the next item is BA 13-22 Fellowship of Wildwood Church, 17770 Mueller Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038, care of Jeff Kruger. A request for the exception to the miscellaneous regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance to allow the placement of two temporary structures on the property located at 17770 Mueller Road, locator number 23W410031, for the purposes of utilizing them for additional classroom space in association with the current church activities. The placement of these temporary structures on the subject lot is not for offices, storage, or related sales activity associated with a new construction or the development period of a project. This request is contrary to Chapter 415.380, item subsection M, miscellaneous regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, Chapter 415.090 NU non-urban resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, and Plan Residential Development Overlay District Ordinance number 522. This particular site is located in Ward 1. And Mr. Chair, I believe we received an email from the petitioner requesting a postponement.
Okay.
And if
That
I'm
being-
correct, please correct me, Ms. Ripito.
Correct, we did. Thank you.
At this time, we will, I'd like to call for a motion to postpone until the next meeting.
Make a motion to postpone till the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Sprunger. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Sorry, Mr. Lux. Mr. Lee beat you to it. Mr. Lee, how do you vote?
He's too fat.
Yes for postponement.
Yes. Mr. Sprunger?
Yes.
Mr. Lux?
Yes for postponement.
And I vote to postpone until next meeting as well. So we'll move that one right along as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We're ready to proceed to the next one, Mr. Vunich, whenever you are.
Mr. Chair, the next item is BA 14-22, Ken and Lori Koch, 17266 Portland Cove Lane, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038. Request an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of constructing a detached garage and breezeway addition onto an existing single-family dwelling at 17266 Portland Cove Lane, St. Louis County, locator number 22W320106, Portland Cove Subdivision, Plat 1, Lot 13, which would thereby authorize a side yard setback distance of 20 feet in lieu of 30 feet. all being upon a 3-acre lot, which is located in the NU non-urban district. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.090 NU non-urban resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance. This particular site is located in Ward 1, and I will defer to Ms. Ripito if this is an item that's postponed or not. Thank you.
We did receive an email from the owners and they would like to continue until the May meeting. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm muted. Thank you, Ms. Ripito. That being said, again, we'll call for a motion to postpone until the next meeting.
I will make another motion to postpone until the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Sprunger. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, I was watching you both. Which one was that? I apologize. Mr. Lee, was that you that spoke?
I can second. Yeah, that's
Yep.
fine.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. We do have a second. So, Mr. Lee, how do you vote?
Yes, postpone.
Mr. Sprunger,
Yes.
Mr. Lux,
Yes.
and I as well vote to postpone until the next meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Mr. Director Bunich, whenever you're ready, we'll move it to the next one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the board, the last item tonight is BA 15-22, Daniel Covio, 18604 Hawks Point Court, Wildwood, Missouri, 63069, requests an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of constructing a retaining wall upon a lot containing an existing single-family dwelling at 18604 Hawks Point Court, St. Louis County, locator number 25Y230152, Hawks Rest Subdivision, second edition, Plat 7, Lot 8, which would thereby authorize a side yard setback distance of 10 feet in lieu of 30 feet and a front yard setback distance of 0 feet in lieu of 50 feet, all being upon a 3-acre lot located in the NU non-urban resident district. These requests are contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.090 NU non-urban resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance. This particular site is located in Ward 6. And again, my understanding is the petitioner would like to proceed forward. And with that, Mr. Chair, the department would like to enter into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this particular request, and all contents contained therein, including the department's recommendation report. And then finally, any testimony, maps, plats, or other items introduced as evidence as part of tonight's hearing. Mr. Chair, with your permission, Ms. Ripito has a slide presentation that she can provide at this time. Thank you.
Please, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I do have a presentation for you. The first map that we're showing here is an overview of the area. Again, you can see that the lot itself is centered here and surrounded by other large lots and some interesting terrain in the area. This is an overview of the actual lot that is located in the Hawks Rest subdivision. As you can see from this map that shows the contour lines, there's some pretty dramatic, there's a pretty dramatic slope starting over here along Hawks Point Road. It actually is like around 692, 696 here, and then slopes all the way down to approximately 604 down in the center of the front yard. The applicant has provided this site plan showing where the retaining wall was originally planned. This is what's included in your packet. I have since discussed it with the applicant, and he drew up a more specific site plan that I'm showing here that actually shows the height of the wall at the distance from the road, and he, instead of having it so rounded off, he actually changed the shape of it a little here. It will still require the exact same variances. It's just changing the shape of the wall slightly. As you can see on here, approximately 25 feet from the road. And again, this is showing 25 feet from the road. There's actually a road easement, a 25-foot road easement along here. So just for clarification, he's asking for 0 foot from the road easement, which is 25 feet off the property line, not 25 feet, or not 0 from the actual property line. And over on this side of the property, he is requesting, instead of a 30-foot variance, he is requesting a 10-foot setback from the property line on this side of the property. So that the department did conduct a site visit. This is the property. They do have an open excavation permit that has been open for a year and has just been extended. This is from the bottom of the driveway looking up at the home, looking to the north. And so there's quite a steep incline here for the driveway. And there's also a pretty steep incline from where the house is. So there's relatively little flat area on the lot. This is actually up the driveway. You can see the home over to the left in the photograph. This is looking north at where there is the land cut out for when they actually built the house, I believe. That's according to the property owner. And so as you can see, it's not exactly stable. This is looking across the rear of the home. You can see the house again to the left. And this is what the land looks like directly behind the house. There's enough room for a shed here, but like this is essentially where the wall is going to be, and for the purpose of stabilizing the property. This is standing at the driveway and looking to the right, so it would be northwest. This is actually from the opposite. After you go up that steep incline in the rear, this is looking back at the property, so you can see the land between here in the house, and you can also see that the house is below grade level. This is up near the road at Hawks Point Drive, not Court. So this is, again, from the top of that hill looking down. This is Hawks Point Court, and down at the bottom, and up at the top, it's Hawks Point Drive. This photograph was taken from the road looking south at the property. You can see the home there. And this is actually from the road more towards the east side of the property, where there's greater distance between the house and the road. This is directly behind the home. Again, you can still see there's quite a bit of distance between the road and the property. This is the closest point right in here from the house to the road. And again, this is down the road further, so you can actually see the road in relationship to the home. And this is right about where he's asking for the 0 foot setback, which would allow him to build up to the 25-foot road easement shown on the plans. This again is behind the home, and you can see the wooded area that is behind the home that is less of an incline towards that side of the property. But you can still see that there is a bit of an incline that will need some stability. This photograph was taken at the intersection, the southwest intersection of Hawks Point Court and Hawks Point Road. You can see in the background beyond that sign, that's actually the view of the house from that corner of the property. So it's not very visible from there. This is a photograph taken from the bottom of the driveway looking south at the neighboring property behind, or like directly in front of his house. So this would be the resident that would be looking at his house and most impacted by the view of the retaining wall. While I was out on site, I spoke with Mr. Covey, and he pointed out a house that is a couple houses down from him that has a retaining wall behind their house that's going to be made out of similar stone. And he said that this was actually what inspired him. With that, that concludes the department's presentation. But Mr. Vunich, myself, or the applicant are all here for questions. And I believe he is online, and we can let him in. Thank you.
Would you mind putting the slide back up? The packet that we have doesn't have where the retaining wall actually goes. So I tried to keep up with you.
Sorry.
I'm going to confess I was not able to. So if we could just kind of, it's kind of hard to get our bearings about where this wall is really going to go.
Honestly, I had a hard time until I went out and actually saw the site.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is the revised drawing here. And so it fluctuates in height a bit. He has it shown at 12 feet at the highest, where it would be within the building setback line. So it will actually go higher than that back on his property, that it won't actually be within the setback line and require the variance. So here it's 12 feet high max at the setback that he's requesting, 10 feet from the property line. And on the other side, again, the wall fluctuates quite a bit. But I believe from what he explained, it should only be about 6 feet where it's at the 0 foot from the easement. And so that, but then it increases as it goes back into the property further.
As the slope goes up.
Yes.
Okay.
Or as more is cut out of the.
So he's trying to, basically he's trying to stabilize the land, quote, kind of behind his home.
Well, Mr. Sprunger, if you don't mind, let's let the applicant come in, and and that's certainly, let's kind of hear what he has to say. And if you don't mind, can you save your questions? Is that good?
Would you like me to leave this slide up so that he can answer questions directly about it while he's in?
I think that would be very helpful. Yes, please. I'm sorry, Arnie, I didn't mean to cut you off. Is there anything else you wanted to ask prior to bringing him in?
No, that's fine. This is the first time now that we're really able to see what he's talking about. So I'm just trying to absorb all this real quick here. So,
yeah. And Ms. Rubito, you maybe hit plus once and see if that cuts it off the screen, or if you can't zoom in just a little bit on your screen.
Oh, I can zoom. That's no problem.
Yep. There you go.
Is that good?
Okay, at this time, we'll call the petitioner forward, ask that he state his or her name, address, relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm Daniel Covey. I am the owner of 18604 Hawks Point Court, Wildwood, Missouri, 63069.
All right, Courtney, if you could swear him in, please.
Yes. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Covey, at this time, if you could explain the nature of the request, the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance as it relates to the character of the property, please.
Okay. So I've owned this property for 3 years. I remodeled the inside while I was doing that, and now I live in it now for a year, and now I'm working outside. And this is a retaining wall that should have been done when the house was built. So I'm at that point where it needs to get done.
And you heard Mr. Sprunger's question. If you don't mind, kind of quickly, kind of tell us what you've drawn up here and explain kind of how you've approached it, if you don't mind, please.
So the reason why I plan on going back on the south side of my property where the 10-foot setback is because I plan on putting a detached garage there eventually, since that's probably about the only flat area that I can get. And no matter what, it needs a wall there. So my plan is to go back a little bit further so I could fit that garage in there. And then along the rest of the property where it's already dug out, continue the wall.
Anything else that you'd like to add?
Not that I can think of. If you got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Covey. At this time, any board members have any questions they'd like to bring to the applicant?
I do want to actually kind of ask one question. As I was reading through the responses from the neighbors and so forth, there was a bit of a question or concern about some of the other, I guess, activities that you're working on that seem to like not be getting done or whatever. And I don't know if that's really a thing or not. And I think the concern was, is this going to get done in a timely fashion? Could you speak to that at all?
So I've actually have been in contact over the last year and a half, I'd say, with 13 different architects or engineers. Most of them didn't get back to me. I wish this project would have gone a lot quicker than it has, but I'm finally at that point where I've had an engineer give me a bid that was reasonable, and he completed his task. So I'm ready to move forward finally at that point. But I plan on taking all the material that I'm going to dig out, because you got to dig back so far and put geogrid. So instead of hauling that out of the neighborhood, I'm actually going to put it in my front yard. So I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone.
Okay, and when you talk about your front yard, is that where your driveway is to kind of?
Yes. At
You
one
give it a
point in
little-
time, my driveway actually went down and then back up real steep at the top, and
Yeah.
a normal two-wheel drive vehicle couldn't even, when I bought the house, you couldn't see the house, let alone get to the house with a two-wheel drive vehicle. So I changed the slope of the driveway for easier access, and now I'm gonna regrade the front yard to a 3-to-1 slope, since that's what Wildwood wants me to do. So
Right.
that's what that material is going to finish. So basically, yes, they will probably be done about the same time.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions from the board?
Just one for me real quick. You mentioned the possibility of adding a detached garage eventually. Do you have a general timeline or an estimate for when that would be done? Or is that just, on the wish list down the road?
I tried to do it at the same time, but the engineer said, let's wait so we can figure out exactly the size of it. Originally, I was planning on building an earth home basically into the side of the hill with 12-foot tall concrete retaining walls, like a foundation wall. Well, the rebar in the height, the structure would have been way too expensive. So I finally got an engineer and an architect out here at the same time, and this is what we came up with, to build a retaining wall and then build a detached garage later on. So as soon as I get it done, I have the means to go forward and continue that as soon as possible. I don't plan on waiting a year or 2 or 5 years to do that. I plan on doing that sooner than later.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, I'd like to open up the floor to any speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor or opposition to this request. And we'll wait a moment, Mr. Bunich.
Again, Mr. Chair, to the attendees, if you would use the raise hand feature, I will promote you as a panelist, and then you'll be asked to give your name and address. And then from there, you'll be sworn in by Ms. Tallman. Thank you. And Melanie went ahead and promoted the one gentleman that had raised his hand. So thank you.
Are you there, Mr. Jolliffe? Is that how you say it? I apologize. You're on mute if you would like to say something, David.
My bad. I'm new now. My name is David Jolliffe. I live at 18627 Hawks Point Court. And I'm the owner of that lot. I guess I need to be sworn in.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Jolliffe.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, the floor is yours, sir.
I have no technical information to share or add to the board, but from a neighbor, and I'm the house that I showed at the end there, new home that was built. And Dan's been working. I know there seems to be some concern about how fast the progress is going on his projects, but you know, from a man who's got another job that he does, and he does a lot of this on weekends and works till very hard to get this done. I think I'd like to, as a neighbor, comment that he is trying very hard to get these projects done in a timely fashion, and is as dedicated as one could be, again, having another job to feed his family, to get these projects done. And I feel comfortable as a neighbor that he will continue that sort of behavior if he's allowed to progress with this current plan that's in front of the board.
Okay, thank you. That's very good feedback.
Mr. Jolliffe, what, I think you mentioned, I think I missed it. Where are you, where's your house in relation to Mr. Coview's?
I'm two houses. I'm not next door, but I'm the house that was pictured at the end of that slide presentation in the corner. So I'm not next door, but the next house up in the very end of the cul-de-sac.
Okay. All right.
And
Thank
I
you.
imagine, Mr. Jolliffe, you experienced the same kind of erosion in the back. It looked like you had a very similar setup, obviously necessitating your wall. I imagine you had very similar characteristics.
Yes, very similar, and without a wall. I mean, I've told Dan before that is just scary looking at that dirt. If we get, you know, St. Louis can get one of these gully washers, I would be concerned about the backyard, and as you saw in the picture, a very small backyard, that hillside could be down there on his driveway, on his turnaround, with very. It wouldn't surprise me to happen. I would be, like him, very anxious to get that wall completed and protect my home.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just, that's pretty much all. I have no technical knowledge. I just want to speak to Dan's work ethic and his effort to try and improve his lot and the appearance of his lot. And ever since I moved here, that's all I've ever seen.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for either the applicant or the participant?
So just to summarize, I want to make sure I got this right. Really what you're doing is you're just trying to stabilize that back hill, right? I mean, you're trying to just provide some structure for that, which I think would actually be a good thing from a runoff perspective.
Yes, sir, correct.
Okay, and I don't know if this is appropriate for you, Mr. Coview, or maybe it's for the department, but in the recommendation, I noticed that there was some mention about, you know, potentially a guardrail, you know, between the road and the driveway, maybe. What is that all about? Because from the pictures, again, I just wasn't able to quite get my head wrapped around. What are we talking about here?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. Given the proximity of the retaining wall to the road easement, and, you know, as we know with the road easement, the roads can't move, they can be changed, and therefore with a 0-foot setback to the easement, we thought it was important to include that note in there. Again, it's not something that would necessarily be required unless there was a dangerous situation, you know, when the wall went in or whatnot. It looks like from the site visit that we conducted that the height of the wall when it's that close to the road. And given that the house is below grade significantly, I don't know that it would be necessary, but Mr. Covey agreed that if the department required it, that he would install one. There were concerns from the neighbors about, driving off the road and having a drop and such, but I don't know that it will be required.
How will that be determined? Because clearly safety is always a concern for the city and understandably so, and the neighbors. How do you figure that out?
It would all be regulated through the zoning authorization process. So as it would be determined, I would defer to Mr. Vunich if he has anything further to contribute.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Vunich.
Mr. Schrunger, I think as the wall begins construction, we'll be able to better understand if there is that safety concern that Ms. Ripito and I had when we visited the property. And if at the end of, as the construction nears conclusion, if there isn't a need, we wouldn't require it. But we prefer to have the board make it a condition with some flexibility. That way, if it is needed, we can proceed forward and not delay the project. If it's not, we'll certainly come back and let you know.
Okay, is that something that you would just make the call as the project would proceed?
That's how I think Ms. Ripito and I would prefer it. It's fair to the applicant because, as I say, the wall will be under construction. We'll have a better understanding of the relationship of it to the edge of pavement. And if it's not needed, we wouldn't require it. But certainly if it is a public safety concern and we'll use our Department of Public Works to assist, then we would ask Mr. Conryu to install. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. That helps. Yep.
Any other questions for the applicant from the board?
And Mr. Chair, we still have 3 attendees, and I just want to offer one more time if any of those attendees would like to speak to the matter, if you'd use the raise hand feature, Ms. Ripito or I will promote you. Mr. Chair, I see none. Thank you.
Hearing none, at this time, we'll offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report. Seeing none, any final comments from the department?
If I may.
Absolutely.
The department also included a couple of other conditions in there. One was to complete the installation of the wall within 45 days per an approved zoning authorization by the city of Wildwood and issuance of a building permit by St. Louis County. And also to complete all associated grading permits and establish ground cover within 60 days of the disturbed areas associated with grading permits. The reason for those conditions is that we have had an excavation permit open for a year, and so we would, as well as the neighbors, would like to see this get taken care of sooner than later, which was a question earlier. I did inform the applicant of these conditions as well, and he had some concerns about being able to get it done within that time period, just weather pending. I don't know if that's something that he would like to discuss further with you. But aside from that, the department supports approval of this variance.
Mr. Covey, did you want to speak to those conditions that the department have outlined?
I can do my best to get it done in that time frame, but it'd be nice if I could get like a 60-90 day instead of a 45-60. That way it's definitely done before the end of summer, before the moisture kicks back in. It's actually a perfect time to do a big retaining wall like that right in the middle of summer when there's no moisture.
Okay. Does that raise any questions, concerns from any of the board members before we move on with the proceedings?
So, Mr. Covey, would you be okay if the weather were right, which it rarely is, but let's just pretend for a moment that it was right. Could you get it done in 45 days?
Yes.
Okay. And like right now, the weather's not very right. So if you were approved right now, I can understand why you'd be a little concerned about the 45 days. Would it be better for you if you waited for the approval to take effect? Because I think what people don't want to have happen is you just start digging dirt and tearing things up. If you had 45 days to get it completed, but you didn't really start it for another 30 or 60 days, does that work for you?
Yes.
Would you prefer that?
Yes, sir. If I remember right, in the wording, it states that 45 and 60 day doesn't start until St. Louis County approves it. Am I correct? So with that said, they're probably going to take a month to a month and a half. So I won't even get it back approved probably until the beginning of June.
Right. It says issuance of building permit by St. Louis County.
Okay.
Okay, so then the way that the city has structured this actually dovetails nicely with, kind of the reality of how you would proceed with the project anyway. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
However, the 60 or 90 days would obviously still give us a time frame that we expect completion. However, it would give a little more flexibility, depending on how, if county were to act quicker, I doubt it, but if they were to somehow move faster, it would probably benefit the applicant to have a little more time. So that would be my only thought. In the grand scheme of things, we're still looking at a 90 to 120 day process regardless, unfortunately. So I would hate to rely on timelines that we really can't predict. It may be better to give more of a cushion, just my thought.
And I have a suggestion. Would the department be willing to add the word substantial completion of the installation instead of complete? He's making progress on this and it looks good. What's the alternative if he's not done,
Right.
on day 46?
Well, you can request, an extension, I suppose. What we're all trying to not have happen is that it just lingers on, right?
Right.
And so trying
That's
to
what I
figure
was
out how to,
saying. If you have substantially complete within 45 days, I think that works.
what does substantially mean?
Well, the staff's going to go out and look at the wall construction for the guardrail system anyway. They can make an evaluation. The permits are all provided by staff anyway.
Ms. Ripito, did you want to add something?
If I may, I don't want to speak on behalf of Mr. Vunich, but I think that I would be more comfortable with, doing a 60, 90 day than substantial completion, just because I feel that that's an arguable a case. And so I'm okay with the 60, 90 days. Again, it's one of those things that we do have an excavation permit that's been open for a year and just got continued, and you've seen the state of the property. And so we're eager to see it completed. And so that's the reason for the timeframes. But I don't think that, 15 days, 30 days is going to make or break it.
I agree.
Well, if you added a month to it, that'd be 75 days instead of 45 days. And so that's kind of splitting the difference, I suppose.
And you're getting into much more reliable weather.
Right. Yeah, you'd probably rather do this in August, but anyway. Okay.
Yep. So let's see, where were you? We're good on the oral presentation department's report. Final comments, any other additional final comments from the department? Any other final any other final comments from the board? Okay, at this time, I would like to close the proceeding for a vote. Can I call for a motion to approve, a motion to deny, or a motion to approve with conditions?
So I'd make a motion to approve with the following conditions. The first condition is the first bullet point under the recommendation regarding the determination whether a guardrail is necessary. The second condition would be to complete the installation of the wall within 75 days instead of 45 days. And then the last bullet would be the third condition, as it is stated in the recommendation report.
And what's that? I apologize, Mr. Sprung, I don't have that in front of me. What's the third condition?
Yeah, it is the third bullet in the recommendation report, or the recommendation section of the report that says complete all associated grading permits and establish ground cover within 60 days of these disturbed areas that are associated with the lot.
Gotcha.
So it's as it is written.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Lee? Mr. Sprunger, how do you vote?
Yes, with the stated conditions.
Okay. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lux?
Yes.
Okay, and I as well vote to approve with the conditions outlined by Mr. Sprunger, as well as in the Department of Recommendation from a report from the Department of Planning. Anything else we need to add to that, Director Vunich?
Mr. Chair, I just have a question. I believe Mr. Lux seconded the motion when he spoke versus Mr. Lee just raising his hand. So could we get that straight for Ms. Tallman?
Yes, absolutely. So, Mr. Sprunger, you brought the motion to the floor with the conditions, and Mr. Lux, would you like to second that?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay.
Mr. Lux, you did second it, didn't you, by voice?
Yeah, I finally beat him.
Okay.
I was slow on that one. Didn't catch which one it was.
All right,
Do we need
thank
to
you.
recap the vote, Mr. Vinich or Courtney? Do we have the following person?
Got it all, everything you said.
Okay, congratulations, Mr. Covey. Your variance has been approved with the conditions we mentioned.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Director Vunich and Ms. Rubito, was that the final case this evening?
Yes, it was, sir. And as Mr. Cross started the meeting, just to remind everyone, Mr. Frank, our acting chair, will pull together an email regarding our start time and send it to Ms. Ripito, and Ms. Ripito will forward on to you and ask you if 6:30 or whatever time it may be is acceptable. I think Mr. Cross was hoping it'd be 6:30 or before, but I'll let him speak for himself. And thank you all for attending tonight.
I would just add, Director,
Thank you.
in that email, we will also ask regarding preferences on how we meet, whether it be continuing Zoom or in person, and that'll be outlined as well. So look for that, and prompt responses will be appreciated, and then we'll decide on next month, because it sounds like we'll already have 3 or 4. So we'll have a long one next week. So that 5:30 start time is looking better.
Steve, you get one last chance to lobby here if you want.
No, Chair Frank just said the 5:30 time looked pretty good, so I'll just leave it at that. I don't need to say anything.
That being said, unless there's any other housekeeping items, I would call for this, the proceeding to be closed.
Very good. Good night, all.
All right.
Night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank